Hello. Let's talk about Daisy Jones and the Six. I'm talking about the limited TV series from 2023. Just in case, someone's watching this 50 years in the future and they made another one. And not the novel. I did not read the novel. Just want to make that clear because I suspect that there are a few things probably different and also probably better or more expanded in the novel itself. Already, I feel like when you're watching the show, you can see some things, like, for example, I have the IMDb page here because I forget characters' names otherwise, so I can quickly reference that. Karen and Graham, I think these are the two. So the keyboard player and the second guitarist, their relationship, I feel, was very fast. We just saw basically some of the main points, the highlights. We basically saw the highlight reel in the limited series, and I'm imagining that in the novel this goes a bit deeper. We see more of that. In general, these B stories, I imagine, are more expanded, which is one of the things that really makes me want to read the novel, because honestly, and now the ranting starts. No. But sometimes it was a bit too much of Billy and Daisy and, I thought all characters were super interesting. Especially, I would love to see more of the drummer. That was my favorite character. Wait, what was his name? Warren Rojas. Yes, I would, he was just the coolest character, and I would love to see more of his story. I'm not sure if there is in the novel, but anyway. That's just a little disclaimer so that if anyone who has read the novel is like, no, but you should read the book because it's super different there. Great. But I wanted to talk a little bit just about my impressions, see if any of that resonates with you. Let me know if you watched the show, what you thought about it. And I imagine the main points that I want to talk about are probably very similar in the novel as well. The main thing I am going to complain about is the ending. So please know that, of course, this video contains spoilers for Daisy Jones and the Six. And yeah, we are going to talk about the ending for sure. Now let's get into it. So first, one of the pros, just to make this very clear, is I did love the show. I loved watching it. I could watch this, for 10 more seasons. Although it's probably good that there aren't 10 more seasons, I do like this trend lately of limited series. It's really cool because it makes the shows be more, have a more rounded and, thought out outline story that has a beginning and an ending. And I feel like it makes them, just have better plots because you don't have this feeling of okay, they don't know where they're going. But, that's also always true for shows based on books because, of course, where it's going because there's already a book. So, of course, Daisy Jones and the Six, 70s, awesome. We're dealing with a 70s music band. For anyone who knows my music taste, this is one of my main loves of music. I don't know, this is the period that I absolutely love, and if Daisy Jones and the Six was a real band, I would probably be a fan of them. I feel like the show is really realistic in this sense of you can see some of these details that come through from a life in a band and how members of a band operate. And also, of course, just the life in the 70s and life in trying to make it in the music industry in the 70s. Now, of course, I was not alive in the 70s. I don't know how it actually was. What I am saying is that it has this feeling of being realistic, which I really loved. Right. And the main cons I have, well, there is just one main con, which is the ending. This is basically why I'm making this whole video. It's like I just wanted to rant about the ending, and I wrote also here that it's not in depth sometimes, which is kind of connected to what we already talked about, based on the fact that this is based on a novel. Because yeah, when you make a series or a movie based on a novel, you always have to be selective about what you include and what you exclude. And I still feel that was pretty well done here. But yeah, sometimes it did feel like, okay, now we're super invested in this relationship between like Billy and Daisy, and there are some things that we really go into details and their whole process and their dialogues, and sometimes I was just like, come on, get a room, I don't know, while there are some other B stories that we're just glancing over. Like, oh yeah, and these two people get together. Oh yeah, and this guy got married. Oh, and this thing happened. Oh, by the way, he was jealous of Billy, the bassist guy. I don't know. So this balance of like how much we are invested in which character, I really missed seeing more of all the different characters too. But of course, I understand that the main story is the relationship between Billy and Daisy, and poor Camilla too. I only say poor because of the ending, and it's not because she dies, it's just because of, I feel like I really didn't like the ending. We'll get to that. Anyway. Okay, so here I have my little notes that I wrote on literally a torn envelope. So anyway, I'm such a pro, as you can see. Anyway, Daisy, love how we see her backstory that explain her selfishness later. Yeah, so Daisy is a very interesting character, and I guess you kind of have to be that kind of a person to be very successful and to be, a star sometimes. But yeah, she's very childish and very selfish and very annoying most of the time. However, I love that we see her backstory so we can understand why she's behaving the way she's behaving, and how, she has basically had to learn that in life she just has to go for it and take things for herself, because other people are not going to, give them to her, or she's not going to be handed things, on a platter or whatever. And then, of course, we have Billy, who is a really cool character, especially in the, I would say, maybe first half of the series. And then in the second half, I mean, all his character does is be like emotionally tortured inside. And he's like, oh my god, I love my wife, and I have a daughter, but also I'm attracted to this singer here. What do I do? And I want to do the right thing, and what do I do? And it's like, okay, chill. Like, I get the dilemma, I get the problem. But I feel like this really went on for a long time, and I tend to not like characters that are like super, I'm just doing the right thing. Because in the first half we saw, of course, Billy does have this side to him, also because of his relationship with his father. He is the oldest, brother. He feels this strong sense of responsibility and to do the right thing and to be the good guy and like all of that. And especially because he really, he went to rehab, and is now not drinking anymore. He was very determined to not be like his father. I also feel that was it's really good that we saw that. But still, in the first, let's say the first half of the show, the series, we also saw some more fun sides of him and just him being more human, other than just this, suffering martyr that he is basically in the second half of the show. At least that's my impression. Maybe am I being too harsh on him? I don't know. That's how it seemed to me. Then I wrote a bunch of other characters like Camilla. Okay, let's talk about Camilla. Absolutely love her character. I think she's amazing. So she loves Billy, and she believes that, loving someone means loving the good and bad parts of him. She's also not perfect. We see that in the show, but overall, I do feel like, and this is also where we're kind of approaching the ending there, Camilla represents the good things, in life for Billy. So she represents true love and personal growth and just, light in life, the joy in life, and family, of course, because they have a daughter. Whereas Daisy, to Billy, basically represents temptation. This is what alcohol was also to him. And he even says that once when he went to her hotel room and Daisy thought that he would come inside, but he just stood at the doorway and looked around her room, and he saw a bunch of, alcohol and drugs, and then also looks at Daisy and he says, and all I saw was temptation. So yeah, I really saw this as these two poles in the show for Billy. And so that was kind of the main decision that he had to make. Right? Who is he going to choose? And it's not just, who does he love more? Right? But which of these two paths is he going to choose? That's how I saw it. And I think that was really, really clear then towards the end when Billy gets drunk and he tells Daisy, let's just be together. We're both broken. Let's be broken together. And Daisy goes, I don't want to be broken, because basically she doesn't want to be with someone who only sees her as broken and who basically only wants to be with her because he believes they're both such shitty people that they don't deserve anything better. That's what I got from that scene. And so she has then, Daisy has this whole monologue on the stage about, love is not just being like, hey, we're broken, let's be together. Love is the thing that makes you a better person. Love is what shows you the good parts of life and makes you want to do better for yourself and blah, 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 all of that. And that's when Billy realizes, oh, shit, wait a minute, that's Camilla. And so he leaves and he runs to her and that's it, right? No, psych, that is not it. Wait, let me just correct this because my phone stand always is a bit too weak for my phone and it always keeps going down. Anyway, yeah, that was not it, right? Billy made a decision. He decided, oh yeah, Camilla is the one for me. And he runs after her, and then bam, 20 years later, Camilla gets cancer, and she writes in her little note after she dies to Billy, yeah, just go be with Daisy. And so he shows up at Daisy's doorstep, and that's it. You can imagine how, I was like, what the fuck, All this time, we were looking at this, okay, what is the major decision? How is Billy going to decide based on the fact that he has to make this decision like I said, in his life, like which of the two paths he's going to choose. And this is absolutely no like shade to the author or authors, also the creators of the show. I'm just saying this based on my experience as the viewer, that like you also as a writer, you have to make a decision, right? How are you going to conclude this story? Where are you going to bring this character? And personally, I feel that this idea of, well, why not have both, is a bit lazy, just creatively lazy, and like, well, I didn't really want to make a decision, because wouldn't it be nice if it always worked out in this way that you can actually have both, but you can't, that's just life. And I don't mean that in some bad way, but in a way of like, I really wanted to see how Billy's character develops and what he intentionally chooses. And then this was just some sort of mellowing out of this decision, and not just decision, of this, let's say, satisfaction of seeing this transformation, right? Because him running after Camilla is not the end. Like, that's a big romantic gesture, right? I want to see what his life looks like then. Okay, I don't know, 5 years later, or 10 years later, or 20 years later, right? And it turns out all of that was basically for nothing. Okay, and maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but you know what? So what, right? I don't care. And of course, if you have watched the show, read the novel, it's basically How I Met Your Mother. Except, this is where I would compare it to How I Met Your Mother, and why I didn't mind this kind of ending in How I Met Your Mother, because that show was, it was very obvious from the beginning, from episode 1, it was very obvious that this whole story was about Ted and Robin. Like, clearly these were the two characters that are supposed to end up together. They're supposed to be together in the end, kind of like Ross and Rachel, right? Since episode 1. And so I feel like also as we were watching How I Met Your Mother, I don't know if you were watching it as it was coming out, I was, you keep wondering, okay, like, what are they going to do? Is Robin the mother? And then you keep getting this answer that nope. But of course, at the same time, you also keep getting this information that, yeah, but these two characters are clearly like supposed to end up together somehow. And so, personally, I was wondering, what's going to happen? How are they going to do this? Like, how are they going to combine these clearly, the clear romantic path of this show, this storyline of, Ted and Robin, with the fact that, again, clearly the mother is someone else, someone that we don't know. And we actually meet the mother way later in season, I don't know, bajillion, and we don't know her as a character. We don't really know her as a character, and we don't get as attached to her as, for example, we are to Robin. So in that sense, I really thought it was pretty elegantly executed, right? I know some people complained a lot, but I thought it was pretty cool. Also with the fact that then the kids say, that this was clearly, I know that you said, oh, you want to tell us how you met our mother, but this was clearly all a story about you and Robin, so please go tell Aunt Robin how you feel about her. And I think that made sense, right? Because that is how it came off. Versus here, in Daisy Jones and the Six, that's not the case. We get to know Camilla with Billy before we get to know Daisy with Billy. Clearly, it's also pretty obvious there's going to be some sort of a romantic storyline between Billy and Daisy, right? They are the two main characters. But yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know what's gonna happen. Maybe Billy and Camilla are going to separate, get a divorce, but I don't remember if they were married. Oh yeah, they were. So like, I didn't know how that was going to turn out, or if he was actually going to have an affair with Daisy, blah blah blah, whatever. There were so many ways to go about the story, and the story itself, like, I understand, I don't have any complaints about the story itself in the middle, but just the ending, really, because of what I already said. This was not the same as How I Met Your Mother, which is basically a rom-com of Ted and Robin. And then somewhere there towards the end, oh yeah, he also married this woman and had kids with her, and yes, he loved her, but she's not really a big part of the story, right? As opposed to here, Daisy Jones and the Six, where we have this triangle for a long time, and we know all three characters very well. And yeah, that's why I thought it was even more important that he does make an actual decision, that this story does resolve in one of the two clear options, instead of doing this whole, it can also let's try to hit two birds with one stone, or whatever. Yeah, and especially that's why I said poor Camilla before in the beginning, because in the end, her getting sick and her leaving messages to people, or maybe just Billy, I don't remember. Well, like her talking to the camera, which, her daughter was filming, blah, 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 whatever. That part is super rushed through, and, I definitely, I know that officially, I keep saying Billy had to make a decision, and technically he did. Technically he did choose Camilla first, so I should be happy with that, right? And then 20 years later, or I don't know how many years later, Camilla dies, and then he goes to Daisy. But the thing is that there was no point of, satisfaction and actual resolution of, okay, he did make this decision. The way that I perceived the ending was more like, okay, so Billy actually chose Camilla, and then 20 years later she died, and he was able to go to Daisy. Okay. Now that we have gotten that little rant out of the way, let me just quickly go through other characters, but I don't really have a lot to say about those, because my main thing was about the ending. I have Brother and Karen, so Billy's brother. Yeah, I just wish I would see more of their story. Like I said, we got the highlights, the bassist. I really love this character as a character, because, there are people like that. Someone who is talented and good enough to recognize that he's good, but not maybe charismatic enough to make, or maybe even courageous enough, to actually do his own thing. Like they have, him and Billy have this little exchange towards the end of the story. I think that was really cool. I like these fights where, you can understand the basis. Wait, let me just check what his name is. Oh yeah, Eddie. Like, clearly Billy always gets what Eddie wants, right? What Eddie wanted. He even, he had a huge crush on Camilla. So you can understand his jealousy towards Billy, but you can also then understand what Billy tells him, because it's true within the story. Oh yeah, my favorite drummer, like I said, we don't really see him a lot, but he's just like the chillest dude, just there to have a good time, enjoy the music, enjoy the ride. I thought that was really cool. And then he marries this comedian and has a cool family. Just awesome. Would watch a show just about him, to be honest. Of course, Teddy and Simone. This is more, okay, Teddy is of course the character who is connecting Daisy and Billy, and Simone is more, she's like this, disco beginner, disco singer, disco diva, whatever, and she's also a lesbian, which is a big part of her story. I mean, yeah, I don't know. So to be honest, Simone is more part of Daisy's storyline, and I wasn't such a big fan of like the whole Daisy storyline. That's why I'm not really talking about it that much. But I did really like the friendship between them, or rather the relationship between them. So that was really cool, and it was nice to see that Daisy has someone who is a friend of hers, right? And Teddy, yeah, well, Teddy is the producer, right? Who recognizes them, both Daisy and, Billy and the Six. The band is called the Six. Yeah, I don't remember. I'm trying to think like if I had any significant things to say about Billy. He's like this partial father figure, mentor figure type of a character, and I think he works very well for that purpose, and he's also a character in himself. So yeah, that's that. So yeah, that was it. That was my rambling about Daisy Jones and the Six. If you are still here, thank you very much for watching, for listening. Let me know if you watched the show or if you read the novel, what you thought. How did you see the ending? If you really loved it, you can try to convince me, but I don't think it's gonna work. Or if you also hated it, then you're welcome to rant in the comments. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.